Thanks for coming to BizTalk. How are you today?
I'm very good. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. So let's start talking about yourself before moving to your venture.
Myself, well, I'm an Israeli. I'm married, have a family, and I studied math and computer science and then neuroscience. I have a Ph.D. in neuroscience in the Jerusalem University, in the Hebrew University. And I worked in a couple of startups. And my background is from a farming community in Israel, which is called a kibbutz. And what we are about to hear is in some way it's mashing up these two, let's say, passions of mine, which is agriculture and machine learning.
Thank you. So let's move to autonomous pivot. It's so right at the moment, because we have so much talk about impact, we so much talk about agriculture, especially now, without getting inside to any politics and so on. Can we start talking about your autonomous pivot?
Sure. So autonomous pivot, let's start from just describing what happens in the United States in terms of irrigation. There are a lot of there are millions of acres of row crops that are farmed and irrigated in the US. Row crops could be corn, potatoes, soybean, and whatnot, alfalfa, cotton. And when they are irrigated, they are mostly irrigated by these irrigation pipes that are rotating in the field. Actually, you can see one behind me here.
Yep.
This is called an irrigation pivot. It's it's 1,200 feet or 400 meters of pipe that is rotating in the field. If you fly over the Midwest, you see these circles, hundreds and thousands of circles on the land, and these are actually the fields that are irrigated by these irrigation machine that we simply call them pivots. So what autonomous pivot is set to be is to actually revolutionize the irrigated row crop farming as it is done today. What we want to do is make the farming far more intelligent, in a sense that we sense the data, we analyze it, and then we can have the optimal irrigation and then fertilizers and then chemicals prescriptions on those fields. So another thing that needs to be known is that through the water of these pipes, it is possible to put nutrients, and that's what farmers are doing, like nitrogen, and this is called fertigation. And it's also possible to put chemicals, and this is called chemigations, especially fungicides. And once we do that, and we control and put the optimal irrigation, fertigation, and chemigations, then we can reduce the inputs or the water, the chemicals, the nutrient. We can reduce it significantly, and even increase the yield. And when we do that, there are two benefits. First, the farmers gain more income because they spend less money. And second, in terms of sustainability and impact on the soil and on the health of the environment is tremendous, because we are not using as much water, we are not spending as much water as we are less contaminating the earth and the underground water with nutrients, and we are less contaminating the plants with chemicals. So to do all that, I'll jump directly to this slide here that just shows how the systems look like. It is basically a couple of sensors that are mounted on the pivots, moves with the pivot, and sense in different sensors. The number one, we want to solve the irrigation, and this is this upside down white pyramid shape. It is actually a radar, a ground penetrating radar. So it is non-invasive. Without touching the soil, we can estimate the level of moisture in the soil. The second one is a nutrient sensor that is working with active light. This is still under development. It's not in production yet, but it's expected to sense the level of chlorophyll to estimate the level of chlorophyll in the leaves themselves. The third one is a crop health that is starting to be in production this year. And it's simply detecting damage of any type, anomalies, pests, damage, and what's not on the crops themselves. There's also some other sensors like a rain bucket in the field, GPS, pressure sensor, temperature sensor. We add all that in the package. Generally, we want to collect as much information as possible in order to have the best insight on what's happening on that specific field. And all this information is collected, analyzed, and we'll see soon how, but eventually there is an app that is accessible to the farmer, to its agronomist, to whoever in that chain of command, and he can see all the information and the insights and the prescription that we give. We want to cover, or let's start and saying only that the main aspect that on the farmer's mind during the seasons are irrigation, fertilizers, and crop health. If we solve these three, we solve 90% of the problems that on the farmer's hand. And this, what we try to do here, we try to cover for irrigation, for nutrients, and for crop health. Let's talk a little bit about this slide, because if we understand this slide, we understand what autonomous pivot is about. So on the left-hand side, we have a couple of sensors that we've seen before, the soil moisture, the nutrient, and the crop health. All this data is uploaded to the cloud. In the cloud, we enrich this information with more data from the web, like soil type, like weather forecast, third-party data that we collaborate with. All this data is then fed and funneled into an AI engine that we develop in the cloud. And the output of that engine is alerts and prescriptions, irrigation prescriptions and fertigation prescriptions. These prescriptions are then going back to the pivots themselves, to the control panel of those pivots, and the pivot can perform the optimal plan. And this cycle repeats itself every 30 minutes. So in this sense, we sense, we analyze, and we act upon the optimal prescription. Currently, we provide irrigation prescription. In the future, we will also provide fertigation prescriptions. So this is what autonomous pivot is about. We are adding sensors and capabilities as we grow. And that's a technical part. We can see some screens of the app. Most interesting is the soil moisture in the soil, the recommended irrigation, and the specific screen for recommended prescription. I'll just show that we are growing significantly. We're growing exponentially, actually, in the years that we are active, in the last 5 years, since 2018, when we started with one system. Now we have close to 500 systems. And the cost of that is a SaaS, so it's $2,300 or $2,300 per system per pivot, per year, sorry. So it's basically per field per year. The farmers do not pay for any hardware, it's simply a service. We are looking for investors. We already raised a couple of $1 million, and we are mainly active in the US. I think that's it. I think that summarizes what we do. And over to you, Max.
Very well. Thank you, Yuval. Sorry, my voice today is not perfect. When it comes to your main market, you said is America, okay? Is US.
Right.
So when it comes to the IoT that you are given to the farmers and where data are collected, the hardware is given for free, let's say, and they pay a SaaS, monthly or yearly subscription, okay, using the data. How you do deliver the data to them after analyzing the data on the cloud and bringing them to the pivot?
So it's all
Collect data, how they, what exactly they get from your service in terms what they should do for the irrigation, for nutrients, or for make sure that the crop is growing well.
So basically there is an app. I think I have it open here, and this is the beginning of the season, so there's nothing much to see now except an expected rain. And maybe we can see some images. And this is just a field that I randomly started and opened. We can see the cover crop right now, so it's not too interesting. But they can see the images, they can see the recommended prescription. Here you can see the GPR on that field. It's still not planted yet. We can see the cover crop from the winter. We can, when they have these images, they can share them, they can see exactly where it was taken. We also partner with Ceres Imaging, it's called, and they are providing us aerial images in NDVI and thermal channels. The farmers can see that as well. It is all through the app based on cellular connectivity, of course. Everything assumed that there is a cellular connectivity. And we take this data also and we ingest it into our engine. So all the data that we collect is shared between us and the farmer. The farmer can also see the weather forecast. And of course, eventually it can see what happened in the field in terms of irrigation and what we recommend it to irrigate in the next couple of days.
It's interesting that you are matching data also coming from that side, okay? Forecasting the weather and so on for the irrigation. How do you recommend to them? What's exactly your recommendations are about for the irrigation, for nutrients, what to buy, how to use it, quantity?
Yeah, so let's talk about irrigation recommendation, because for nutrient we haven't started to do the recommendation yet. But for irrigation, we are doing it for a couple of years now, and it is, I don't know if many knows it, but it's pretty complicated subject to know exactly how to irrigate. So irrigation is easy. You open the tap and you irrigate, right? But irrigation precisely is very hard, and some crop are more sensitive to over irrigation and some are less. And for those who are not very sensitive, so farmers simply, oftentimes they just irrigate them all the time, which is very, very wasteful of water and energy. In order to do the appropriate irrigation, we take into consideration the soil type exactly on that part of the field, with, of course, the crop type and the crop growth stage. So for every crop, there is a growth stage. It's like an age of the man.
Yeah.
And along the growth stage of the plant needs less or more water, or is susceptible less or more to water stress. And since we have the cameras, we know exactly what the crop stage is. We don't have to guess it from the date of planting or whatever. And what we take also is the ET, of course, the evapotranspiration that we collect along the days. What else goes in there and is also the predicted weather forecast. Like if we know rain is coming, then there is no need to irrigate in the maybe we can wait a day or two just to save that irrigation. Another thing that is going into the calculation is what's the flow rate of the pump that is irrigating. Some farmers have very strong flow rate, like 1,200 gallons per minute, and some very low, like 200 gallons per minute. And this all has to be taken into account. Another thing that we take into account is what the cap of what's their allocation of water. Some are, you don't want to reach the allocation. And if a farmer reaches the allocation, then his quota allocation that he's simply not allowed to irrigate it more, and that can be detrimental to the field. It can kill the entire crop. So all this enters into the equations and eventually leads us to output the optimal prescription of that specific field in that specific time.
What about nutrients and the crop stage?
Okay.
When you launch these services?
So there is, it's well known that at specific crop stage, crop needs nutrient, but at the other they need less. For example, in corn, there is a growth stage that is called V8 and then V distillation, where the flower starts, and between V8 and VT, most of the nutrients needs to be given. If there is a lack of nutrient of nitrogen specifically in these stages, then it is going to be less yield. So we have to be very careful about providing the sufficient nutrient at these growth stages. And if we are recommending a nutrient, for example, then we cannot recommend an irrigation, or when we recommend a nutrient, we don't want to heavy rains to be coming a day or two after that, because if we are giving, if there is a fertigation round, that is, fertilizers are provided through the irrigation system on the field, and after that there is either irrigation or a rain, then the nutrients themselves, they leach into the underground water, or simply they are lost. They are just washed away in the soil. So all that money that was spent on the expensive fertilizers is just wasted, and we contaminated the soil and the underground water. So we have to be very aware of what's going to happen in the next couple of days when we give an irrigation. So this is an example of the consideration that we take when we give a fertilizer recommendation, and the interplay between fertilizers and irrigation and so on.
I presume that when you have all three services together, the performance for the farmers will be much higher.
So yeah, maybe I'll go back to that slide that we've seen, or maybe this one.
Yeah.
One let's say, differentiator between Autonomous Pivot and many other companies in this field, in this area, is that we are striving to have a holistic view of the field. That is not just one sensor that senses water and that's it, or senses moisture and that's it. We want really to integrate all the information and cross-validate the data that we get. And then we are able also to provide a reasonable recommendation. And, we will not recommend a round of fertilizers and then a day after a round of heavy irrigation. It doesn't make any sense. No farmer will do that. No agronomist will recommend to do that. So once we have a full picture of the field, if there is a pest stress or a nutrient stress or a water stress, we know what to do in these cases, and we know exactly what to recommend.
What about the market? You are now in US. I'm sure you keep to stay in US because the market is simply huge. Are you going to move outside US one day?
Yeah, so just a few words about the market in the US. In the US, there are 200,000 irrigation pivots. Actually more than that, and it's growing. Most of them, of course, in the Midwest, and we are working with that. Majority of our states majority of our systems are in Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, and we are now branching out to Idaho, Oregon, and all this Washington. There is a potato area, and we are also starting to work in Australia. There's quite a lot of pivots there. We have a system in the United Arab Emirates, and the the next market would probably need to include Brazil and South America.
I'm curious. Pivots are pretty huge. Can be quite vast. How many devices do you need to put in one pivot?
So that's a good question. On low value crops, there is simply one system because it just doesn't make sense financially to have so much sensing on the field. One have to understand that first, our sensing is far more than whatever exists today. Today, there are so much probes that are in one location in the field, and we are sensing in hundreds of points around the field. And so in high value crops like potatoes, there is a sense to put more cameras, and we are working on a system that will have more cameras along the arm of the pivot, so that we will be able to offer this option to any farmers who are interested to put more.
In terms of business model, how exactly works? How much are you charging to?
Yes, the business model the business model is deliberately simple. It's $2,300 or $2,300 per system per field, and there's one-time installation costs about $300 or $400. It's really an installer that gets the money. But for us, we give the service. And if the farmer is not happy, he can stop the service anytime he wants. And the farmers really like this model because they don't have to commit and buy hardware before they even try the service.
In terms of funding?
So in terms of funding, we were funded with a couple of $1 million. And we are now looking for the next round. We're looking for a leader for another couple of $1 million. And in order to support the continued growth, like you've seen on the exponential growth, we want to do a couple of thousands next season. And to cross actually we will be switching to profitability after this round. So I'm inviting any investors that is interested in what we're doing just to contact me and or Max, and I'll be happy to provide more details on the coming round.
Thank you. The market you have been described is pretty huge. You got I think 500 devices, roughly,
yeah,
compared to 200,000.
Yeah,
this is a fraction of the market.
Yeah, it will take us. It will take us some time to get to 10% of the market. It's really a blue ocean opportunity here. There's so much, there's so many pivots, and there's so much to do. So I think financially, it's an excellent opportunity here. I think the product market fit is already proven. The market want it. I should mention maybe that we didn't do any advertisement. We have one salesperson. And that is everything we did so far was with a one salesperson without advertisement. And so there is a demand from the farmers, and we like it, and we want to continue this way.
But are you going to use some of this funding done in this round to marketing and sales?
We are going to go into marketing more substantially as we cross into thousands of units. We need to be more. We need to extend our sales team, extend it from one to couple, and do some advertisement, and also work with big companies, which are starting to show very serious interest in what we do, both in terms of sustainability and in terms of just getting connected with the end farmer through the app.
This was my question. What's the average size, the dimension of the farmers you're working on? Are small farmers, big farmers, industrial farmers?
Okay, so it really varies. We started naturally with small farmers, and what happens with farmers is that they see each other on the field and ask, "Hey, what's the thing hanging down the pivot?" And then they start talk on breakfast, and everybody talking about that. And so we get a lot of contact from farmers or clients that are telling us about another farmer. And so while we try to avoid working directly with the farmers, we are having big channels that we are working with. I can say some of them. For example, Nutrient Ag Solution. It's the biggest ag retailer in the US and in Australia, and you're working heavily with Nutrient. There is some work that is done with PepsiCo and some other companies that is starting to take place.
You're an entrepreneur. What's your vision for autonomous?
Oh, that's a good question. So I always jokingly say that the vision is, the company is going to start in 2025. In 2025, we are going to have tens of thousands of pivots all around US and the globe. And we are going to be a data company, basically, because there will be tens of thousands of systems that are streaming agronomic data into our data warehouse. We're going to have a database that is unmatching anywhere else. There's nothing like that. And the thing that we could do, the universities could only dream of. And so this is a part when we start to harness actually machine learning models into the entire picture of the field along the season. And I think this is where we will start doing maybe the next revolution of farming using AI. And I think it's very exciting what's going to be there.
But we even think it is huge fertilizer company without giving any name, but they really need the real data, not presumed.
They really need it in real data. Yeah.
They really need this kind of data to develop new fertilizer, much more performant than they are today. So yes, you have a vast territory.
So what I'm coming from a company before that is called Mobileye. Mobileye is doing autonomous vehicles, and the impression, the vision is from there. I don't know if you know, but when you buy a car today, it is usually collecting information and uploading to the cloud, and it just so that it's important not only to upload information to the cloud, but also to control. What I learned there is it's very important to control your sensors. And if you are talking about fertilizer and nutrients, the fact that we are making our own sensors is crucial, actually.
Yes.
And we know exactly what data we collect, what's the benefits, and when the data is noisy and not usable, and when it is. And we can come up with new sensors that are needed very easily because it is our system. And so it is. There is a famous saying in data analysis that is saying garbage in, garbage out. If you don't, if you feed the machine learning with garbage, you will get a garbage.
100%.
Yeah, so we have to know what you're feeding it, and you make sure it's not garbage. And because we control the sensors, we know what it is, and we're making sure it's not garbage. And this is the only way to go. So it's a slow process. We need some patience, but we're gonna get there.
Let me close with this, Yuval. What's your message to investors? Why they should invest in autonomous pivot?
So there are two hats here. One is maybe we should start with sustainability and impact. I think if, as an investor, you're interested in really making a change and an impact on how the world is behaving now, we are already having an impact on hundreds of thousands of acres, and the way they are irrigating, and very near in the way they are fertilizing and putting chemicals. And it is already, we have shown statistically that the farmers that use us are using 15% less irrigation than other farmers, at least 15, if not more. And it's going to be the same with nutrient and chemicals. So if you want to, this is a great sustainable opportunity, and we can show that because we are measuring all the time the data in the field, we can show that. That's number one, the sustainability and impact hats. In terms of financial, I think this company, Autonomous Pivot, is going to be hundreds of millions of revenues, not too far from today. It's going to be $1 billion company, if not a couple of billions. The data that we collect is second to none. It will be valuable by itself, we could either sell the data or trade upon this data and do some commodities tradings. There is a lot to talk about this as well. We can do models that are really very different from today's model, plant model, and so on. And as you can see, we are growing. There is a serious demand, real demand from the fields themselves, from the growers. And we are inviting you to join the ride.
Yuval, thank you so much for coming to BizTalk. It's been a very great pleasure for me.
Yeah, thanks to you, Mac, for the opportunity. It's been great being here, and I really like what you do, and I'm looking forward for more contacts.
Thank you so much. Take care.